Jonas had never expected to find himself on an alien planet, much less in the middle of a desert, standing in front of the wreckage of an alien ship. He was just a mechanic, used to fixing old vehicles and broken machinery, not something as grand as this. The ship was enormous, and its hull was covered in strange symbols and designs that he couldn't begin to understand. It had crashed not far from the settlement where he'd been working, and he had come to investigate, drawn by the sight of smoke rising into the sky. The ship had clearly been in battle. Its body was scorched, the metal bent and twisted in unnatural shapes. Jonas approached cautiously, scanning the wreckage for survivors. He wasn't sure what kind of alien life forms might have been aboard, but he had a responsibility to help if he could. He had spent his life fixing broken things after all. When he stepped into the ship's interior, he was met with an eerie silence. The air was heavy with dust, and a faint glow from the ship's dying lights cast long shadows along the walls. He made his way through the corridors, trying not to trip over the debris scattered around the floor. Jonas came to a room that looked like some kind of medical bay. There, lying unconscious, were two beings, tall, humanoid, and covered in strange armor that shimmered like the surface of a pool. Their bodies were battered, their breathing shallow. Jonas immediately set to work, trying to stabilize them, using his knowledge of mechanics and medicine to assess their injuries. After what seemed like hours, he managed to get them both hooked up to the ship's emergency life support systems. As he wiped the sweat from his brow, he heard a soft sound coming from the doorway. Turning, he saw a woman standing there, tall and regal, her features sharp and commanding. She was dressed in robes of dark blue, adorned with gold symbols that glowed faintly. She had an air of power about her that was impossible to ignore. "You've helped them," she said in a voice that resonated with authority. Her eyes, sharp and green like jewels, studied Jonas closely, as if she could see right through him. Jonas stepped back, surprised by her sudden appearance.
I didn't expect anyone else to be here. Who are you?
"I am Queen Varela,"
she said, her voice unwavering.
"And you are a human. I did not expect one of your kind to find us." Jonas swallowed.
"I'm just a mechanic. I was passing through and found this wreck."
"I couldn't leave you like this." Queen Varela's gaze softened slightly. She walked toward him, her steps graceful, and examined the injured aliens on the life support. "You are kind to help, but there is more to this than you realize."
"I owe you a debt."
Jonas was about to protest, but she raised a hand to silence him.
"I'm not here to thank you for your assistance,"
she said, her eyes locking with his. "I am here because of something more important, something that involves you." Jonas felt a knot tighten in his stomach. "What do you mean?" Queen Varela took a deep breath, as if gathering her thoughts.
"I have a daughter, Princess Selena. She is the heir to my throne, and I have seen visions of her future."
"She has seen you in her dreams. She believes you are the one she needs to help her, and her vision is not one to be ignored."
Jonas frowned. "What do you mean?"
"I'm just a mechanic. I'm no one special."
"You are special," Queen Varela insisted, her voice unwavering. "In my daughter's vision, she has chosen you."
Chosen you as her father. Jonas felt as if the ground had shifted beneath him. "Her father?" he repeated, his voice barely a whisper. The queen nodded solemnly. "My daughter has the gift of foresight. She sees the future clearly, and it is through your bond with her that our people can find peace. Your connection will bring the strength we need." Jonas could hardly believe what he was hearing. The idea of becoming a father, especially to someone so powerful, was absurd. He didn't know anything about ruling a kingdom or raising a princess. He was just a mechanic, a simple man who had never imagined his life would lead to something like this. But Queen Varela was insistent. "You must come with me. There is much to discuss and much to understand." Jonas stood frozen in place. He had no idea what was going on, but there was something in the Queen's eyes, something that made him feel as though this was a path he couldn't turn away from. He wasn't sure if he was ready for this, but in that moment he knew one thing for sure. His life would never be the same again. Jonas followed Queen Varela through the dark, twisting corridors of the ship, still trying to make sense of everything she had just told him. His mind was racing. A daughter? The heir to her throne? And she wanted him to be her father? It was absurd. He was just a mechanic, an ordinary man who had spent his life working on engines and fixing things. Nothing about this seemed to make sense. The Queen didn't say much as they walked, but the weight of her presence was impossible to ignore. Her robes flowed around her like liquid silk, and the faint hum of her every step seemed to echo in the ship's hollow walls. She didn't look back at Jonas, but every now and then he would catch a glimpse of her face. Her sharp green eyes were focused, determined, as if she already knew what was coming. They arrived at a large, circular room that looked like a throne room, but it was different from anything Jonas had ever seen. The walls were made of some kind of transparent material, and through them he could see stars glimmering far off in the distance. The room was illuminated by soft, ambient light that seemed to come from nowhere. It was peaceful, yet unsettling, as if he had stepped into another world. In the center of the room was a large golden chair, ornate and grand, though it seemed out of place in this futuristic setting. A figure was sitting in the chair, a young girl who couldn't have been more than 12 or 13 years old. She was dressed in a delicate, shimmering gown, her long silver hair cascading down her back like a waterfall. Her eyes were the same deep green as the Queen's, though they were softer, kinder. When she saw Jonas, her face lit up with a bright smile, one that seemed to radiate warmth and energy. She stood up quickly, her movements fluid and graceful.
"You came," she said, her voice melodic, almost like music. "I knew you would."
Jonas felt his heart skip a beat. This was Selena, the princess, the one who had seen him in her visions. He didn't know what to say. He had never met this girl before, yet something about her made him feel connected to her. It was as if he had known her all his life, and the thought unsettled him. I'm here," he stammered. "I don't really understand all of this. I'm just a mechanic. I don't know anything about being a father, especially not to someone like you." Selena tilted her head as if she were considering his words carefully.
"You don't have to know anything."
You just have to be here. I've seen it, and my mother has seen it too.
"You are the one who will help me lead, the one who will guide me. You're the only one who can." Her words were calm, yet they carried a weight that Jonas couldn't ignore. He felt like he was standing at the edge of a precipice, looking down into an abyss. He had no idea what this meant, what role he was supposed to play in all of this. But Selena's eyes, her innocent, trusting eyes, seemed to speak a truth that he couldn't deny. Queen Varela stepped forward, her presence commanding. "She has chosen you, Jonas. The visions are clear. You are the father she needs."
The galaxy is at war, and we need your help to end it. My daughter, Selena, is not like other children.
She is destined to rule, but she needs someone who will help her understand the responsibilities she will bear. Jonas looked from the Queen to Selena, and his heart tightened. He didn't know how he could help. He didn't know how to guide someone so important, so powerful. He was just a man from Earth, a mechanic who barely understood the politics of his own world, let alone the fate of an entire galaxy.
I don't know what you're asking of me,"
Jonas said. "I don't know anything about being a father to someone like her. I don't know anything about ruling, or about this galaxy. I'm just a man who fixes things." Queen Varela's eyes softened, and for a moment, she seemed almost human, not the regal, untouchable queen she had appeared to be before. "You have a gift, Jonas," a gift of empathy, of understanding. You see things others don't. My daughter needs that. She needs your guidance. You may not see it now, but in time you will. She is powerful, but she is also vulnerable, and I cannot be the one to show her the way. You can. Jonas shook his head, feeling overwhelmed. The pressure of the Queen's words, the weight of Selina's trust, was almost too much to bear. He had never imagined his life would take such a turn. He had come to this planet to repair some broken machinery, not to become a father to a child of destiny. But despite his confusion and fear, something deep inside him stirred. A part of him knew on some level that this was where he was meant to be. It didn't make sense, but nothing in his life ever had. His life had been about fixing things, repairing broken pieces. Maybe this was just another puzzle, one that he didn't understand yet. I don't know if I can do this, Jonas said, his voice quiet. But I'll try. For her. For you. Selina smiled again, her eyes glowing with something like hope. That's all I need, she said softly. I knew you would come. The Queen stepped back, nodding in approval. We will start tomorrow. There is much for you to learn, Jonas, and much for Selina to understand. Jonas nodded, still uncertain, but something in him had shifted. He wasn't sure what the future held, but he knew that he couldn't walk away now. There was too much at stake. For the first time in his life, he felt like he was part of something greater than himself, something he couldn't turn away from. The Queen gestured to the room's far side, where a table was set with strange glowing maps and holograms of distant planets. Tomorrow we will begin your training. There is much to learn about our world, our people, and the enemies who seek to destroy us. Jonas took a deep breath. I'm ready. But as he looked back at Selina, he couldn't shake the feeling that his life was no longer his own. The path ahead was unclear, but one thing was certain. He had made a choice, and that choice would change everything. The days blurred together for Jonas as he trained under Queen Virella's watchful eye. Every moment felt like a lesson in something he wasn't prepared for. There were things about the galaxy, about the history of the alien races, that he had never imagined. He had spent his life on Earth, never dreaming of such distant stars or of meeting beings as powerful as the Queen and her daughter. Yet here he was, sitting at the center of it all, trying to make sense of it all. The Queen's palace was vast, and every room seemed to pulse with energy. In the mornings, Jonas would join Selina for their lessons. She was a quick learner, absorbing everything he taught her with ease. He tried to teach her about human customs, about kindness, about empathy, things he thought would help her connect to the people she would one day rule. It was strange, guiding someone so much more powerful than him. Yet there was something about Selina that made him feel less like a teacher and more like a partner. She seemed to be both a child and an adult at the same time. Her intelligence was startling, but there was an innocence to her that made her seem like a young girl, just beginning to understand the weight of the world. She asked questions about everything, about love, about friendship, about things Jonas had taken for granted all his life. It was like being a part of her world and yet still an outsider, unsure of where he fit into the bigger picture. One evening, after a long day of lessons, they sat together in one of the palace's gardens, watching the stars twinkle above them. It was a peaceful moment, a rare pause from the intensity of their training. Selina, sitting next to him on a low stone bench, looked up at the sky with a faraway expression. "Do you think they'll accept me?" she asked quietly. Jonas turned to look at her. She was so young, but her eyes held the weight of the universe. She wasn't just the princess. She was the future of her people. The expectations on her were enormous, and he could see that she carried that burden with grace, though it weighed heavily on her. "Who?" Jonas asked, though he already knew the answer. "The people," Selina said, her voice soft but filled with determination. "The others who rule. My mother says they want to see strength,
But they don't know me. They don't know who I am.
Jonas hesitated. He could feel the depth of her worry, her doubt. It reminded him of the uncertainty he had felt when he first learned about the role he was meant to play in her life. Strength doesn't always come from being powerful, Jonas said. Sometimes it comes from understanding, from knowing who you are and staying true to that. I think they'll see that in you. Selena smiled faintly, but didn't look at him. She was still thinking, her mind far away. The stars above seemed to mirror the uncertainty in her heart, distant and cold. I don't know if I'm ready, she murmured. Jonas wasn't sure what to say. He could only imagine the pressure she must feel to carry the fate of so many on her shoulders. It was something he couldn't truly understand, but he wanted to help her, wanted to make her see that she wasn't alone. You don't have to do it alone. I'm here for you, Selena. You're not just their future. You're mine too. I've never had anyone to protect, to guide. But I'll protect you. I'll help you. She turned to look at him then, her eyes searching his face. It was a silent question, one he didn't know how to answer. What did it mean to protect her, to help her? He didn't have the answers, but he could see the trust in her gaze. She was depending on him, just as much as he was beginning to depend on her.
You're the father I never had, Selena said quietly. You're the one who will show me the way.
My mother believes it. I believe it. Jonas felt a wave of emotion rise in his chest. He hadn't asked for this. He had never imagined himself in this role, but it was real. He had promised to help her, to guide her, and though it terrified him, he knew there was no turning back now. The next day, Jonas spent the morning in one of the palace's libraries, studying more about the factions that ruled over the galaxy. Queen Varela had been training him in politics, history, and strategy, trying to prepare him for the world Selena would eventually inherit. He had no experience in this field, but Queen Varela seemed to think it was important that he understand how to navigate the complexities of power. As he scanned through the ancient texts, he couldn't help but feel out of place. The palace was magnificent, the alien technology far beyond anything Earth had ever achieved, yet it all seemed so fragile to him, as if everything depended on the right choices, the right moves. He wasn't a leader, he was just a man, trying to make sense of a world he couldn't fully grasp. In the afternoon, Queen Varela summoned him to a meeting. They sat in a large circular chamber surrounded by holographic maps of star systems and military movements. The queen was as composed as ever, her expression unreadable as she gestured to the projections in front of them.
We are preparing for a major summit, she said. It will involve the leaders of the major factions in the galaxy.
They have been hesitant to recognize Selena as the rightful heir, but we have no choice but to force their hand. Jonas listened carefully, trying to follow along with the conversation. He had no experience with politics, but the Queen's calm demeanor made it clear how serious the situation was. This wasn't just about her daughter's future. It was about the future of the entire galaxy. Your role, Queen Varela continued, will be to present yourself as Selena's protector, her guardian. You must demonstrate that you are worthy of the trust she has placed in you.
This will be the first test of your bond.
Jonas swallowed, suddenly feeling the weight of the responsibility pressing down on him. He had never wanted to be anyone's protector. He had never wanted to be in the middle of a galactic power struggle. But here he was, and it seemed there was no escaping it.
I understand,
Jonas said, though he wasn't sure he did. Good, the Queen said. You'll accompany us to the summit. You will stand beside her, make your presence known. If the factions see that you are loyal to Selena, they will be more likely to accept her. And if they see that she is protected, that she has someone who will stand by her, they will be less likely to challenge her. Jonas nodded, though the reality of the situation was starting to sink in. This was bigger than anything he had ever imagined. He was no longer just a mechanic. He was a part of something far greater, a part of a world that was beyond his understanding. Later that night, as he prepared for the summit, Jonas found himself standing alone in the palace's gardens, looking up at the stars. The weight of the universe seemed to press down on him. He didn't know if he was ready for this, for the responsibility that had been thrust upon him. But he knew one thing for sure. He couldn't back out now. He had made a promise to Selena, and he intended to keep it. Tomorrow would be the first real test of their bond, and Jonas had no choice but to stand by her side. The summit arrived faster than Jonas had expected, and the weight of the day settled heavily on his shoulders. Queen Varela had insisted that he be present by Selena's side. His role was vital, even if he still didn't fully understand why. The galaxy was watching, and the future of the alien queen and her daughter depended on the support they could gain from the powerful factions who held the key to peace or war. As Jonas prepared himself, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of a much larger, more complicated journey. The summit was being held on an ancient space station, built long before any of the factions had come to power. The room itself was circular, and in the center, a massive table was surrounded by chairs where the leaders of each faction would sit. Around them, guards and attendants stood in silent readiness. Jonas had dressed in the robes provided by Queen Varela, dark and regal. The fabric was fine, though he still felt out of place in such attire. He wasn't used to being surrounded by so much grandeur, so much power. He had always been a man of simple things, someone who fixed things with his hands. Now he was part of something far greater, standing at the edge of a future he didn't understand. Beside him, Selena stood poised, her silver hair cascading down her back like a waterfall of light. Her gown shimmered with a subtle glow, and her eyes, those sharp, intelligent eyes, scanned the room with calm authority. She was ready. At least, she seemed to be. But Jonas could see the faint flicker of uncertainty in her gaze. She wasn't the child she had once seemed, but she wasn't yet the ruler she was destined to become. Queen Varela entered the room, and the atmosphere shifted instantly. There was no mistaking her presence, her grace, her power, her authority. The leaders of the factions rose to their feet as she passed, but it was clear that not all of them were pleased by her arrival. Jonas watched as a few of them exchanged wary glances. They were not here to make friends. They were here to protect their interests. When Queen Varela took her seat at the head of the table, the room fell into a tense silence. Selena stood beside her mother, her posture straight, her hands clasped behind her back. Jana stood next to her, doing his best to appear composed, even though his heart was racing. He felt exposed, vulnerable, in a way he hadn't expected. He had never been a leader. He had never been a part of something this important. "We are gathered here today," Queen Varela began, her voice calm and steady, "to discuss the future of our galaxy. The time has come to unite our people or face the consequences of further division. The fate of our world rests in your hands." Jonas didn't speak, but he could feel the eyes of the leaders on him. They were watching him, looking for signs of weakness or strength. It was as if every moment was being measured, evaluated. And though he wasn't the one speaking, it was clear that his presence here had significance. The Queen had placed her trust in him, and Selena was depending on him to show that she could lead with the support of others. One of the faction leaders, a tall alien with black scales covering his face, leaned forward. "Your Highness, the alliance you seek is not one we will enter lightly," he said, his voice harsh. "There are factions within the galaxy who believe that your reign will bring nothing but chaos. What proof do you have that you are worthy of the throne?" Jonas felt the weight of the question settle in the room. He glanced at Selena, who stood still, her expression calm but determined. She had been trained for this moment. She had prepared for the challenge of leadership her entire life, but it was her strength, her presence, that would make the difference. He knew that now. Queen Varela's gaze remained fixed on the leader. "My daughter has the vision to see what others cannot. The future is not about power. It is about understanding. Unity, not division. I ask for your trust, not because I am the queen, but because Selena is our future. A murmur rippled through the room, but it was not the response the queen had been hoping for. The leader of another faction, a being with pale, translucent skin, stood next. Trust? You expect us to trust a child who has no experience with the harsh realities of war, who has only lived in the shadow of her mother? If the queen cannot secure our future, why should we place it in the hands of the princess? Jonas's heart skipped a beat. This was the moment, the point of no return. He had to act to prove that Selena was not alone in this. He could feel the gaze of every leader on him, the weight of their expectations hanging in the air. He stepped forward, his voice steady, though he could feel the tension in his body. I am no ruler.
I am no politician,
He said, his words simple but direct.
I am a man who has fixed broken things. And I've seen something in Selena, a strength that comes from understanding, not from power.
You can't see it because you're looking for the wrong thing. She's not like the rest of you.
And that's why she's the future. There was a long pause. The room silent as the words hung in the air. Jonas didn't know if what he said would make a difference, but he had spoken from his heart. Selena had taught him to see beyond the surface, to understand the person beneath the title, beneath the expectations. Finally, Queen Varela broke the silence.
You see, Selena has something none of you have, an open heart.
And it is through that heart that the galaxy can heal. Not through war, not through force, but through understanding. One by one, the leaders spoke, their words measured, cautious. But Jonas could sense the shift, the subtle change in the atmosphere. They were listening, not just to Queen Varela, but to him. They were beginning to understand that Selena was not just a child, not just an heir, but a force that could unite them all. As the summit continued, Jonas stood at Selena's side, his role becoming clearer with every passing moment. It wasn't just about protecting her. It was about standing with her. It was about standing with her, believing in her, and showing the galaxy that they were stronger together than apart. The summit concluded hours later, and as the leaders filed out, their faces showed signs of approval, some even offering subtle nods to the Queen and Selena. The galaxy was not yet united, but for the first time in a long while there was hope, a flicker of light in a dark, divided world. Later, when the room was empty and quiet, Selena turned to Jonas. Her eyes, once uncertain, were now filled with a soft, quiet confidence. You did it, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Jonas smiled, though it was tinged with exhaustion. We did it. Together. For the first time since he had arrived on this alien world, Jonas felt like he had found his place. He was no longer just a mechanic. He was part of something greater than himself, a part of a family and a future he had never expected. The journey ahead would not be easy, but he knew now that with Selena, they would face it together, and that, in the end, was all that mattered.